The town of Elmridge was peaceful, cloaked in ivy-covered cottages and the gentle hush of countryside winds. Nestled in the northern reaches of England, it was a place where time moved a little slower, and secrets were often buried deeper than the roots of the ancient oaks that lined the roads. It was during the funeral of local businessman Harold Whitmore that everything changed. The townsfolk had gathered in the old stone church, the pews filled with somber faces and the air heavy with incense and grief. The service was proceeding quietly, until a sudden bark echoed through the chapel. It was Samson, a golden retriever known by all as the most obedient and loyal dog in Elmridge. But that morning, as the coffin was being lowered, Samson let out a deep, guttural growl and barked furiously. Everyone turned. Then, the question came from a man in the second pew. Why is he barking at the coffin? The priest, Father Ellery, turned pale. Chapter 1. Samson the Loyal. Samson wasn't just any dog. He had belonged to Emily Whitmore, Harold's only daughter, who had died mysteriously 3 years earlier. After her death, Samson had wandered the cemetery every morning, sitting silently by Emily's grave until dusk. Many said he was mourning. But what few knew was that Samson had witnessed something the night Emily died. Chapter 2. The Whitmore Family Secrets. Harold Whitmore was admired publicly but feared privately. A self-made man, he had acquired his wealth through a series of business deals that always seemed to benefit him most. His estate, Rosehill Manor, was the largest in Elmridge. But behind its manicured hedges lay shadows no one dared mention. Emily was different. A kind-hearted woman in her late 20s, she had dedicated her life to animal rescue. She was the one who found Samson abandoned on the outskirts of town. Their bond had been immediate and unbreakable. The night Emily died, the town was told she fell from the cliff behind the estate while walking Samson. But something never sat right with her childhood friend, Jonathan Pierce, who now returned to Elmridge for Harold's funeral. Chapter 3. The Man Who Asked Why. Jonathan had been away in London, working as an investigative journalist. Emily's death broke him. He had begged her to move to the city, but she had refused, something about needing to stay for her father's sake. Now, standing in the church and seeing Samson's outburst, something clicked. He approached Father Ellery after the funeral. "What did you see that day?" Jonathan asked. The priest hesitated. His fingers trembled as he clutched the rosary. "I wasn't supposed to say anything, but Harold made me perform a last confession. What he told me, it wasn't meant for the world." Jonathan stared at him. "What did he confess?" Father Ellery looked around the empty church and whispered, "He didn't just confess a sin. He confessed to a murder." Chapter 4. The Letter in the Locket. Emily had worn a silver locket every day since she was a teenager. After her death, it had disappeared. But when Harold's body was prepared for burial, the mortician found it clutched in his hand. Inside was a tiny rolled-up piece of paper. Jonathan, now determined to uncover the truth, convinced the mortician to show him. The paper was faded but readable. "If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. I saw the files. I saw what he did." Emily. Jonathan's heart pounded. He needed to find out what files she meant. Chapter 5. Rosehill's Forbidden Study. Returning to Elmridge, Jonathan approached the caretaker of Rosehill Manor, an old gardener named Thomas, who had worked for the family for decades. After some persuading, Thomas agreed to let Jonathan into the study, sealed since Harold's death. Inside, under the oak desk, Jonathan found a hidden compartment. In it were several folders labeled Project Elmridge. Each document detailed experiments, medical trials done on unwitting patients at the town's clinic, tied to Harold's pharmaceutical ventures. Among them was a file labeled Emily Whitmore, Discovered. Jonathan felt sick. Emily had uncovered everything. Chapter 6. Samson's Witness. With each discovery, Samson became more agitated. Jonathan began retracing Emily's last steps with Samson beside him. They walked the same trail behind Rosehill. Near the cliff's edge, Samson stopped, stared into the distance and whimpered. Jonathan looked around. The area had always been considered treacherous, but something stood out. A broken piece of fencing clearly forced open. Jonathan recorded the scene and took samples from nearby rocks. That night, he met with a local forensic expert who confirmed Emily had not fallen, she had been pushed. Chapter 7. The Priest's Redemption. Father Ellery, guilt-stricken, gave Jonathan access to a private journal Harold had left. One entry stood out. "She knows. She confronted me. She said she'd go to the police. I told her she wouldn't live to regret it." The final entry read, "Tomorrow I end it. My sins are too heavy. The dog knows. It's in his eyes." Chapter 8. A Town Reckons. Jonathan published the findings in a national paper, with supporting documents and witness statements. The article exploded across media channels. Hero dog solves murder after 3 years. An investigation was opened. Rosehill was seized. Victims from Harold's experiments began stepping forward. Samson was awarded a medal by the local mayor. His face appeared on TV, newspapers, and even children's books. But he didn't care. He simply returned to Emily's grave, lay down, and wagged his tail as if to say, "We did it." Epilogue. The funeral revisited. A year later, the town gathered again. This time to unveil a statue in the cemetery, a bronze dog standing guard over a young woman's grave. At the base were the words, "To the one who barked when silence hid the truth." Moral of the story. Truth has a way of surfacing, even when buried under years of silence. The bond between animals and humans transcends language. Justice can come from the most unexpected places. Never underestimate a dog's instinct and loyalty. Sometimes a bark speaks louder than 1,000 words.